Hello boys and girls, this is Mr. So. Welcome back for another lesson of biology. Today we are going through lesson 52 of chapter 16, Spinal Cord and Reflex. Before you start watching the video, remember to like and subscribe my channel and also share the video to your classmates. Let's start. Spinal cord, it is a structure which extends from the medulla oblongata. If you cut open the spinal cord, you can see the spinal cord with a butterfly-like structure. For the butterfly-like inner region, it is called the gray matter. It is composed of many cell body. That means the nucleus of the neurons. Since the nucleus of the neuron is very dense, so it shows a darker color. On the outer region, it is called the white matter. It shows a paler color. Why? This is because it is showing the nerve fibers of neurons. And the nerve fibers actually consist of the myelin sheath. That's why it looks paler in the color. In the center of the spinal cord, you can see the central canal. It is filled with the cerebral spinal fluid. The table below shows you the distribution of gray matter and white matter in the different part of the CNS. Please take a look at it on your own. In the spinal cord, you can see the spinal nerves connected to the spinal cord by two nerve roots. The root showing now is called the dorsal root. It contains the sensory neurons. The sensory neurons contains the nucleus, the cell body, on the side of the neurons. With many cell body gripping together, it forms a dorsal root ganglion, causing the swelling on the dorsal root. The root without any swelling is called the ventral root. It contains the motor neurons. The following diagram shows you a spinal cord. Can you try to draw out all the different types of neurons, the sensory neurons, interneurons, and the motor neurons, as well as the receptors and the effector? Let's try. This is the sensory neurons. In the spinal cord, you can see the interneuron. Going away, this is the motor neuron. The receptors can be any type, such as the touch receptors, the pain receptor, or the thermal receptor for temperature. While for the effector, it could be muscles. Now, in the spinal cord, where do you find the gray matter and the white matter? In the center, where you can find a butterfly shape, this is the gray matter. On the outer layer, this is the white matter. Please go to your textbook page 17 to finish the MCQ. For the function of the spinal cord, it helps to relay the nerve impulse between the brain and the other body parts. It acts like a bridge. Imagine what if your spinal cord is injured. Ouch, that's painful. What might happen? We know that spinal cord helps to relay the nerve impulse between your brain and the other body parts. If it is injured, if it is broken and damaged, what might happen? One possible consequence is that you might be paralyzed, 瘫痪了. Another function of the spinal cord is to act as a reflex center for many reflexes involving in the trunk and the limbs. That means the part below your neck. As stated before, your spinal cord helps to act as a reflex center for reflex action to occur below your neck region, that is the trunk and the limbs. What is the characteristics of reflex action? Let's take a look. The following picture shows you the pupil reflex, 瞳孔光感反射. When there is strong light shining on your eye, your pupil will constrict immediately. The following picture shows you the withdrawal reflex, 退縮反射. When your hand touches a hot object, you immediately withdraw and move away your hand. After looking at the pupil reflex and the withdrawal reflex, you should know some characteristics of reflex action. First of all, it's inborn, 天生嘅, you don't need to learn it. Secondly, it's very fast, rapid, and it is automatic. It will just do it and respond very quickly on their own. You don't need to control it. Next, it is also stereotyped. That means when you have the same stimulus, in the reflex action, you always give the same response. The action of reflex action is also involuntary. It does not involve the cerebrum at all. That's why it's very fast. It gives fast response, so it helps to protect us from danger. This is the importance of having reflex. Fast action to protect us from danger. Reflex action, which occurs in the head region, is controlled by the medulla oblongata. Examples such as saliva secretion, swallowing, coughing, and the example I've given you before, the pupil reflex. All the above examples is the reflex action which occurs in the head region, controlled by the medulla oblongata. For the reflex which occurs under your neck region, it is controlled by the spinal cord. Examples such as withdrawal reflex, 退縮反射, and the Kneejerk reflex, 失弱反射. Let's take a look at how the withdrawal reflex is brought about. When your hand touches a hot object, the receptor has two functions. The thermoreceptor now, it detects the stimulus and generates nerve impulse. After your thermoreceptors detects the stimulus, the hot temperature, and generate nerve impulse, the nerve impulse will travel along the sensory neurons to the interneurons, and then out of the motor neurons and goes to the effector. That is this time the arm muscles. The arm muscles will contract. After the arm muscles contract, the hand withdraws to prevent damage. Your withdrawal reflex is very fast, and the nerve impulse does not go to your cerebrum. It does not involve the cerebrum at all. The question is, then why do you feel the pain? This is because after the withdrawal reflex, some of the nerve impulse, they will travel to the brain through the interneuron to the cerebrum. The nerve impulse will travel up to the cerebrum, and this gives a sense of pain. Since your hand withdraws before the nerve impulse reaches your brain or cerebrum, therefore, it is actually a very fast response. It helps to protect your body from damage. Please go to page 24 and finish MCQ question 1 and 2. The diagram below shows the arrangement of some neurons in the nervous system. Question 1. The person touches a hot object and withdraws his hand immediately. How many neurons are involved in this action? So this is a withdrawal reflex. So for reflex action, very importantly, it does not involve the cerebrum, the brain. So how many neurons should be involved? It should only involve 3 neurons. The sensory neurons, interneurons, and the motor neurons only. Question 2. Which of the following is connected to the type of neurons which is named as neuron X? In order to know what is neuron X, we have to identify all 3 neurons in the following picture. For the neuron at the top, it is the sensory neuron. Why? Because it has the cell body on the side of the sensory neurons. And the spinal cord, you can see the interneuron. And then the last one, the neuron at the lower side, it must be the motor neuron. So what is connected to the motor neurons? It could be two things. It can either be the effector muscles, or it can be the effector such as the glands. Anyone? Now the question is, which of the following option, A, B, C, D, is an effector? It has the muscles or it has the glands? The correct answer should be A, because in your skin, you have the sweat glands, 汗腺. Another reflex introduced by a book is called the Kneejerk reflex, 膝躍反射. When the tendon, 筋, just below your kneecap ball is tapped, after the tapping, the stretch receptor over here will do two things. It will detect the stimulus and generate nerve impulse. This time the receptor is called the stretch receptors. It will detect the stimulus and generate nerve impulse, move along the sensory neurons into the spinal cord. But interestingly, for knee-jerk reflex, there is no interneurons involved. After the nerve impulse sent to the sensory neurons, it will go directly into the motor neurons and then go to the leg muscles for contraction. When your leg muscle contracts, your legs will kick up. We call this knee-jerk reflex. The sensation of tapping will be sent by the nerve impulse through another interneurons to the brain. The function of having knee-jerk reflex is to maintain posture and balance. For the nervous pathway which brings about the withdrawal reflex and the knee-jerk reflex, we call it the reflex arc, 反射弧. For the reflex arc in the withdrawal reflex, it involves the receptors, sensory neurons, interneurons, motor neurons to the effector. This is how the nerve impulse travels. However, in knee-jerk reflex, it involves the receptor, the sensory neurons, and then directly to the motor neurons to the effector. No interneurons is involved in the knee-jerk reflex. That's it for the video about the spinal cord and the reflex. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.